Hi, Matt. Welcome to the Integrative Health Coach Success Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, you're welcome. I'm excited for our chat today. I think we're going to kind of dive into a topic that is familiar, but I like your unique kind of take and approach on it. So looking forward to our chat. What I would love for you to do to start is, could you share with our listeners a little bit what you're currently doing with your IHP certification?
Yeah, absolutely. Basically, I got through level 2 earlier this year. So fairly new to being a level 2 practitioner. But once I dove into level 1 and continued with level 2, I started applying everything I was learning to myself and my family, just to get a really good foundation, and then expanded that towards some distant family and some friends and some neighbors and some coworkers that live in California. So at this point, I am helping a handful of wellness clients with foundational nutrition and lifestyle, performing the at-home lab tests, and just finished building a website and getting portal integration going. So I'm really in the ramp up stage at this point. So this past year, I've had, like I said, a handful of wellness clients and taken them through some of the protocols. So it's really been great.
That's great. And what were you doing before that? I see a spine and pelvis in the back.
So we're recording from the clinic today. So before that, I'm a physical therapist. So still a physical therapist, right? I kind of divide my time between what we're doing. But for the past over a decade, I've been a pure clinical physical therapist, deal with aches, pains, vestibular, neurological issues, whatever it is, whatever the rehab comes from, basically, I've had experience dealing with it in some way, shape, or form. So I've been in the hospital setting, orthopedic private practice setting. I have my own private practice, treated pediatrics, adults, far and few between. Yeah.
That's great. Now, do you integrate anything from IHP in your current PT practice now, or do you kind of still keep it, pretty separate? Whereas, the PT part's clinical and you kind of do stuff on the side.
Yeah. So the reason why IHP appealed to me so much was just some personal trying to figure out what was going on with some family members, but there's people in the clinic, like I can think back to literally 10 years ago where I could not get them better mechanically, right? Physically, mechanically. It just not all the dots were connecting and aligning where, boom, this person got better. We found the driver of the problem. They're now better. They're walking normal. They're whatever it is, right? And it happened every so often and maybe a little bit more recently. And I knew there was something else going on, and none of their doctor team could tell them what to do. No test showed what was going on. And I was just like, there's something wrong with this person that I don't know. So someone said, hey, check out Dr. Stephen Cabral and IHP certification. So I read about it. I checked it out. Dove in, and there is. So that's kind of like what I said, connected those dots for me. So as far as my private practice, I keep the clinical stuff and the IHP stuff separate. I kind of created like sister companies, so to speak. But there's a lot of carryover, right? So a lot of the PT patients may become wellness clients as well.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. It's funny you say that, because when I was in my early years of, I was a personal trainer. And when I was in my early years of personal training, I didn't know so much of what I know now. And now I can think back to very specific clients where I'm like, oh, that client probably had like estrogen dominance and, a thyroid imbalance. And that's why they couldn't lose weight. And that's why they were always tired, right? Like I can think back in a similar way that, you just mentioned. So we evolve, we grow as practitioners, and our clients get to reap the benefits of that for sure.
Yes, absolutely. And it as I was taking the courses and going through the certifications, it was just like in my brain, like, oh my God, that person, needed this, or we needed to do this with that person. So it's nice to have that education now and be able to offer more services to the community.
Yes, absolutely. So, kind of on that note, what I would love to talk about next is kind of how you approach. Now, we'll talk a little bit less about like the clinical physical therapist aspect of it, and we'll kind of switch a little bit gears to your more of your wellness practice, and it might pertain to both too. But if you were to kind of say what one thing you believe to kind of be the best approach with your clients to get them the greatest success, right? What would that be? How do you approach things to get your clients the best results?
Yeah. So again, kind of like similar to what I was doing or am doing with physical therapy, clinical work, kind of molded it for the wellness client field, is just starting in a point where no one gets overwhelmed. So the wellness client doesn't get overwhelmed. Me, the new IHP practitioner, doesn't get overwhelmed. And just taking a step back, looking at that subjective information we pulled from the client and having a discussion like, where do you feel like this is coming from? What's been going on? And then just creating really simple game plan on the lowest hanging fruit possible first, right? So if we find something that's really easily correctable, or something that we can do to identify a problem really easily, go for that first. And as you're doing that, create a light bulb in your client's head, like, oh, right, that's what I needed. This is what I've been missing. Or give them a plan that has quick results, faster results, that they can see like, oh, wow, I do feel better after doing that, simple thing right away. And that might just be, walking more during the day. It might just be standing a little bit at work. It might be adding this into your diet or taking this out of your diet.
Yes. Yeah, I can't agree more. I think because most people have a lot going on and stress is usually a component, right, with overall well-being. I think when we overwhelm our clients straight off the bat, right, because we tend to know so much and we can kind of like see the big picture and all the things that would be helpful, right? But when your client's not speaking that same language, it can be just one other stressor, like, oh my gosh, that was so overwhelming and I don't know where to start. And sometimes it's for some people, if their stress response is like, flight or to not do anything, they can kind of withdraw and think like, okay, if I can't do all this, like I might as well just do nothing. And like you said, they don't get those small wins. And what the small wins do is kind of keep them engaged and honestly more invested in the process because they're seeing results, right? Nobody wants to do or make changes that may be uncomfortable at first or a lot of work or whatnot if they're not going to see results, right?
Right. Yeah, that's what I found works best, is a couple simple things, modifications, and that's going to, like I said, allow them to invest their time, some financials into the bigger picture. And you may in your mind have, 19 things that you want to do with this wellness client, but start at number one and number two and keep it really simple and gain that rapport with your wellness client.
Yes, absolutely. And sometimes, I have some clients that I can read really well and I share, what we'll do down the road. But a majority of people, I don't even share, like, it's just, let's start here. Once we master these two things, then we'll take the next best step, right? So many people aren't sleeping good. So many people aren't eating good, like basic things that before you start over supplementing or, trying fancy biohacking gadgets and whatnot, right? Bringing them back to the basics of, let's do 3 things really well. And then we can kind of move on to bigger and better. I think 1, keeps them from getting overwhelmed, but 2, like you said, gives them something to achieve, seeing results, and then that keeps them, engaged and wanting more.
Yeah. And it also works with those clients who are biohackers or they're super into health, nutrition, everything, and they think they have everything figured out. They're missing a piece or two. Still, don't go overboard with them in the beginning. Like, maybe dumb it down a little bit for them so they can realize, hey, I am missing this whole sleep piece, like I'm doing all these other things, but I need to sleep consistently, better, or whatever it is that they're missing. And again, just do that foundational block first before you kind of build from there.
Yes, absolutely. I'm curious what your like usual go-tos. Let's kind of just talk about like a standard American diet, somebody that's kind of just functioning in normal standard American society with not a whole lot of health knowledge. Where do you typically see the biggest wins with those kind of like first few steps? What are the things that you tackle the most?
Yeah. So if I told that person to like, I don't want you to eat anything out of a bag or a box or a jar or whatever it is, they would probably be shocked, right? Potentially, or they'd be like, oh crap, like what am I getting myself into? So I say, I don't want you to eat after 6:30. So it might be hard with work, with kids, with sports schedules, whatever it is. Learn how to prep some food, learn how to cook some healthy meals quickly, maybe reverse things where you're doing your bigger meal earlier, you're having your shake later, whatever it may be. But let's say we're going to cut you off of eating at 6:30 or 7:00. And then after that, you're going to drink water with lemon, or you're going to have tea, whatever it is. And I was like, let's just do it for a week. Let's do a 1 week challenge, 7 days. Anyone can do anything for 7 days, right? So a lot of times I'll do that because a lot of people we work with are stressed. They have 1,000 things going on and they're eating dinner at 8:30. They're not getting home till late. So it's like, well, let's figure out how to scale that back a little bit. And that's going to give your digestive system a chance to rest, and you're going to feel better. You're going to sleep better. And then once they do that for a week, they say, oh yeah, right. This does make sense.
Yeah, I love that you start with that one because it's simple. It doesn't take a whole lot of like thought and planning other than like, okay, I just can't eat. I can still do what I'm doing. I just have to stop it at 6:30, right? So it's not super overwhelming, but it also has so many like downstream type of benefits. You mentioned sleep, but their glucose is going to be better regulated. They are likely going to get deeper sleep. So they're probably going to have more energy. They're likely going to notice the effects of, like you said, more of a digestive rest. So maybe their digestion's better. And then that cuts down on gas and bloating. Maybe it cuts down on cravings because they're not, waking up with elevated glucose levels. I mean, there's so many things that just that one simple thing could change, that you're almost like habit stack resulting.
Right. Yeah. This is like the vitamin D of the habit, right? Like it can affect so many things. Like you talked about that trickle down effect, right? So, and then it's also about proving to themselves that, hey, I can do this. And if they struggle, it's like, all right, let me know if you're struggling and let's figure out, how to have something prepped and easy to go so you can take it out of the fridge when you get home at 5:45 and you guys can sit down and eat. And maybe you're eating then and you're still cooking your kids' food or whatever a little bit later, but you just come up with different strategies for different people,
Yes. Yeah. Because the bio-individuality, while we talk a lot about like internal bio-individuality, I mean, there's a lot of external factors that come into play too. Like you said, schedules, are they married? Do they have kids? Or what's their work life? Like there's so many things that can come into play that pose different challenges. And that's the benefit of having a coach, is to kind of like, okay, I hit a roadblock, and you can kind of help them pivot through that. But there's so much value in, like you said, seeing, okay, this was something that I thought would be hard and I did it and I felt better from it. Like, what's next? I can take another, small challenge. And I think we can sometimes forget that we're just like big kids in adult bodies, right? But like, this is what you would do with a child, or this is how they teach things to children, is like steps, and we build on things, right? I feel like we're not a whole lot different in how we can handle challenge and change. And I do have some clients that are like, listen, I am all in. I'll do anything and everything you say. Like, these are usually like type A, like just, they're going to do it all. And I give it to them all. And I can tell what clients can handle that and who can't now. So there's certainly some people that you don't need to go step by step for. but I think a majority of people, especially older clientels, right, over the age of like 55, 60, they tend to kind of be a little bit more set in their ways. It's just such a beneficial approach that builds their confidence in becoming more well.
Yeah. And, for those people, I think it's easier to change like one or two habits at a time than, like you said, give them the whole boat and change this, you know what I mean? It just is like a nice transition. And then once you do two or three things, it's like, they're living a much healthier lifestyle. So they're feeling better. All those trickle down effects have happened. And then you're like, all right, let's move into some of these different protocols and testing and give them some higher level things that require a little bit more effort once they're feeling a little bit better.
Yes. Yeah. I think it's a great approach. I'm curious what your number two, or if you have like a tie between 2 and 3, where do you usually go after, like, let's just stop eating?
So the stop eating thing is usually 1. And then the second one is like, what are you eating and how much of that, processed food are you eating? Right. So I say, instead of having pasta or rice all the time, let's have black lentils or some quinoa. So just making some small substitutions to some of their carb, sugar habits, right? So instead of having some kind of sugary drink, lemon water, unsweetened iced tea, whatever it may be. So I would just make small substitutions on some of their bad habit foods.
Yes. Yes. And even that can be one step at a time too. I mean, I've been thinking back to a client of mine who was probably like the worst diet. I mean, they were just eating fast food. They were drinking soda. I mean, everything about their nutrition was wrong. And I knew that they'd been doing it for so long that it was like, oh, I mean, I don't even know where to start. And where I started was taking out just their Diet Coke at night. It's like, okay, no Diet Coke after 2. And that was hard for them. Right.
Right.
And then once like we could take it out for the whole day, okay, great. Now we can kind of like move on to food. But there was so many layers of terrible choices nutritionally that they were making that I even started like one step at a time with that, because for people who are used to feeling or like having that constant caffeine or constant sugar, I mean, it can be a shock to just like cut the cord.
Yeah, they're going to get headaches. They're going to be irritable, the whole deal. So I'll talk to them and say, all right, do you want to cut out like the sweets that you're having during the day? Or do you want to cut out the 2 or 3 cups of pasta or rice you're having, with dinner at night? And they'll choose. And we'll say, all right, let's do that. Let's do that for 3 days. And then in another 3 days, we're going to cut that portion size down, or we're going to substitute that with something a little bit healthier and, just start to modify things slowly. Yes.
Yeah. Another point that goes back to kids, right? If you want more compliance and less struggle, give a choice. Right. Whichever choice they're going to make, that either choice is going to lead to better health outcomes, but let them, decide which will be easier for you to give up first, and they get to choose so they don't feel like they're being, as deprived or as,
Yeah. And that will lead you into, a lot of times the first step, right, is a functional medicine detox or whatever it is. So if you get them cutting some of those things out and they feel like they can live with that, then you say, all right, this is, a little bit more intense than what you've been doing, or a little bit more restrictive, but let's try this approach next.
Yes. Yeah. Priming them for the detox, so to speak. Yeah. I think Absolutely. It's a great approach. Do clients like give you feedback as far as like actual conscious feedback of that was super helpful, that you took it step by step, or it's just that what you see work the best, or is it a little bit of both?
Probably a little bit of both. I've had people say like, wow, like I don't miss it. Like cutting that one thing out, like I can live without that. And I'm like, all right, great. Like it's gone. Like forget about it. Like we're going to go to the next step and the next step. And some people, they just don't realize, and they're just kind of like in it and they're progressing, and then they start asking me, well, what else can we do? Like, what else am I doing wrong here? So that's kind of what I see, is like you baby them along step by step in the beginning. And then at some point they're like, what's next? Like, what are we doing next? What else can I do?
Yes. Yeah. Cause they're probably starting to feel significantly better. And
yeah, once they feel that like energy kind of go up and be level instead of so up and down, that's when they're like, oh wow, like, I didn't need that Coca-Cola or that PM coffee or whatever it is.
yes. Yeah. It's so interesting how so many people, their energy is the issue. And it's again that up and down where people are just riding these, highs and lows of energy throughout the day, whether it be from glucose dysregulation or caffeine consumption or just anxiety and stress and whatnot. But so many people don't even know what it feels like to be, have an even sustainable energy throughout the day. And when you kind of give them a taste of what that feels like, it's kind of like a new experience.
Yes. So it's all about, like you said, what it feels like. They just don't know because they haven't done anything different, or they've been on this really bad diet for years and years and years. So flipping it slowly, educating them, getting them to feel the difference. A lot of times it's the energy or it's sleep, where they notice that first and they're like, oh, wow, this is like great.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I'm curious how the functional medicine lab tests, do you see those as a way, like a kind of window into doing deeper work with them, because there's kind of this quantitative result matched up to it once you kind of get to that point?
Yeah. So coming from my clinical background, if you tell people to do something, they may or may not do it. If you show them like, here's the proof, here's the black and white, like, you can't step down a step right now without knee pain. We have to do X, Y, and Z, versus, hey, look, these lab tests are not ideal, right? There's things that are off here. There's things we can work on here. This is what you're missing. This is what you've been chasing for the past 2 years with routine blood work and, some other tests maybe that we haven't found. This is what we need to do to correct it.
Yes. Yeah. I find that it can be incredibly motivational and also, kind of that concrete data versus like, oh, what is like not eating after 6:30 going to do for me? Right. Like it's kind of this arbitrary versus like, okay, here is your cortisol at night and it's high and we need to find ways to bring the cortisol down. Right. Some people just gravitate more towards that quantitative proof when it comes to kind of being a motivating factor. I feel like even sometimes, it's that I'll go to test sooner than later because I just know that the type of personality.
Yeah, if the client's willing to test, like go ahead and let's get more data and show them what's going on. And also the person where you may know, like, hey, this person's cortisol rhythm's way off. Telling them that may mean nothing to them. They may need to see it because that's what we're used to, right? We're used to seeing things. This is high, this is low, this is in range. So if they see it and they feel it and all the symptoms, you basically tell them that this is what's happening, right? Like, maybe you don't go to sleep well, or maybe you do go to sleep well, but you wake up and you're in the middle of the night. You're on your phone, right? It takes you an hour to go back to sleep. Those are the people that are, it's like, okay, tell them the symptoms, show them the test. They're going to buy in and be like, okay, what's the game plan?
Yes, absolutely. I've had so many clients where I'm like, this woman is probably estrogen dominant. I can tell there's a thyroid imbalance. She probably has high cortisol at night. And I bet my life her vitamin D is low. And I could supplement all that stuff and but the test comes back and shows exactly that. But the client gets a way better experience and way better confidence in kind of the plan going forward when they can see like, these are my levels. This is what's going on. And I need to do something about it for sure.
Right. And we talk so much about like taking the guesswork out of it. Right. So to prove to the wellness client that, hey, we're not really guessing here. Right. Like we talked about this collection of symptoms you have and what kind of category you're in. We would recommend these protocols or these lifestyle recommendations, modifications. But here's a way to support all that. And if we're wrong, that's fine. Like it'll be surprising, and we can kind of like change gears and go from there. But 9 times out of 10, it's like everything adds up, connects, and they are like, okay, let's go through it, right?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Do you see that do you ever have, and I think you kind of alluded to this, do you have physical therapy type clients that, aren't necessarily getting some physical kind of relief and you're suspicious of like inflammation, or do you move anybody from like the physical therapy realm over into wellness? Or are you seeing like a
Yeah, absolutely. So those are like those missing patients I talked about where I could not help them. Like, normally I tell people we're going to get you 90% better. The last 10% is just going to take a little bit more time and continuing with the modifications I taught you, things will settle down. These are people that no matter what we do, same results coming back where they're in pain, they get a little bit better, then they go right back to where they were. And that's the global inflammation piece that is really holding them back, or their deficiencies, right? So it's their stress, their deficiencies, global inflammation. It's adding up to just not allow their body to get better. It's kind of like how it not allows their body to lose weight or sleep better. Same thing with these people in chronic pain because of a global inflammatory response that's happening, stemming from the gut, wherever it is. So.
Yes. Yeah. And I mean, so much of it, like you said, can be, inflammation and deficiencies. It could be, hormone, low DHEA causing joint pain. It can be, so many foods, right? Food sensitivities causing, physical based pain and symptoms, some emotional, right? There's so many links that to have the background that you have to kind of say, okay, we've kind of exhausted all of this, clinical, physical type of manipulation and work. Now there's this option. If you're really kind of wanting to dive deeper, must bring incredible value to your practice.
Yeah. So I used to go from step where we're not fixing this mechanically with physical therapy. You need to go to the doctor and get some chemical intervention, whether it be an oral medication or an injection, or dive deeper into some other tests. And a lot of times they would go and they would get that oral steroid or the injection and they still wouldn't get better. Right. And then at that point I was like, you got to just keep working with your doctor. Right. So we went through basically everything we could. So now there's this whole layer, this whole other, field where it doesn't go mechanically better. Let's go into this integrative approach first before you go see your doctor, your surgeon, again, to do more invasive pharmaceuticals.
Yes. Yeah. So I think it's an amazing link to have. And I'm sure the more you kind of do it and get into the wellness side of things, I'm sure the more you'll see it merge and kind of become incredibly beneficial, to clients on both sides for sure.
Yeah. And I'll bring it up, like we're making a little bit of progress. It's not, we're not seeing the results we want at this point, 2, 3, 4 weeks into therapy. There are some other things you could do in an integrative approach and kind of just give them some general information during a session or two. And then if they want, they can, sign on to the wellness side of things and start investigating a little bit more.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. Where can people learn more, find more out about you, websites, social media, any of the places that you show up?
Yeah. So, like I said, the website is movewellwellness.com. So that's like our sister company of MoveWell Rehab. So it's movewellwellness.com. Email is info@movewellwellness.com. Those are the best place to get a hold of me now. And more to come from health and wellness blog, socials, those kind of things. We're working on that.
Yes, that's great. Thank you so much for being a guest on the Integrative Health Coach Success Podcast. I enjoyed this conversation, and I think it brought a lot of tangible, good, thoughts and next steps for coaches working with clients, who may need kind of that step-by-step approach. So I appreciate you being here.
Thanks so much.
Bye, Matt.
Bye.